Hello Aces, Ace Comet Fan here, and let's talk a little bit more about the history of Strangereal, more specifically the history of the Belkan Air Force, one of the most, if not the most famous Air Force in the whole Strangereal. What I did is I translated the Belkan Air Power magazine, which is a in Strangereal magazine that is available on the Ace Comet Zero website. So I've translated it from Japanese to English thanks to help from a friend of mine. And so let's take a look at the background to the Belkan Air Force, of the history of the Belkan Air Force, and also some more implications and discussions about the topic, and also early days in Strangereal. The following text, because I'll be reading as I talk about it, you can find in the description of the video. There's a link to the original text translated to English and Japanese text. So let's get this started. So the magazine is called Belkan Air Power. It is a Belkan magazine, and this particular issue was published on July 18th of 2005. So basically 10 years after the Belkan War, 5 years before the events of Ace Comet 5. And the title of this article is called The Background to the Power of the Belkan Air Force. So starting the text now. It is difficult to describe the traditional Belkan Air Force in one word, given that they produced many veteran pilots in its history of war. However, it's no exaggeration to say that the Principality of Belka, never called a great country, has always been at the leading edge of military innovation with the organization of its air force until the end of the 20th century, and that the country played a major role in developing aeronautical technologies. Now, the beginning of this paragraph, it talks more a little bit that Belka was not called a great nation like back in the early days of Strangereal, so like beginning of the 20th century. It's a little bit similar to what we have with World War I, where Germany was not called a great nation, even though it was powerful, and that's most likely because they didn't have those foreign territories in, say, Africa or Asia, unlike other major, European countries like Britain or France or even Portugal, Belgium, and the Netherlands, which had vast territories abroad. So continuing with the text, these facts explain why its history attracts so much attention by military historians and researchers. The creation of the Belkan Air Force happened during the Osean War from 1905 to 1910, which is the first conflict in human history that saw the deployment of aircraft as a weapon of war. The creation of the Belkan Air Force started with the efforts of Special Minister. I wasn't really sure on which term to use in the translation, so that was the best. There was no official translation to that. So the Special Minister Franklin Golnitz, I don't know how to say the name in English or German, and he established the foundations of the organization. Golnitz is said to be the individual who came up with the idea of using reconnaissance planes in strategic bombing missions during the early stages of the Osean War, so kind of similar to real-life aviation in World War I. With the success of his tactics, he managed to put light on the sky as the new battlefield, which was then joined by several countries. So the other countries saw he was being successful and they just copied whatever he was doing. At that time, aircraft squadrons were also known as the Knights of the Sky, and Golnitz popularized the saying, "Who controls the sky controls the ground." And there's room for doubt as to whether the meaning of this phrase was correctly understood at the time for the people in the war. And this saying became the slogan of many air forces throughout the Strangereal. As mentioned above, Belka was successful in forming the first air force in the world to reach an operational level. However, its focus was on bombing missions, at least in the early days. Also, the Belkan Air Force earned its merits soon after it started engaging enemy aircraft in order to obtain air superiority. So that's how they got their fame, not because of the bombings, but because of the dogfights. In order to control the skies, the Belkan Air Force then realized that it had to start focusing on the development of aircraft that could obtain maximum maneuverability. We can say that Belka was lucky in this aspect since the country had already been on the path of industrialization since the beginning of the 20th century. As a result of Belka's superior manufacturing skills, the Belkans were able to build faster and more agile aircraft. Considering that the Belkan Air Force had not been established for over 10 years during the Osean War, it is remarkable that the Belkans were capable of developing their aeronautical industry in such a short period. In the end, the Belkan Air Force developed a unique fighting style focused on air-to-air missions instead of bombing missions. It was common for some squadrons of the Belkan Air Force to be made up of few pilots who would manage to defeat and shoot down a great number of enemies by using their superior organization and mobility. Then we go to the next page. It is said that the Belkan Air Force is composed of two wheels, two principles that work together. The first one was the education system, and the second one was the industrial power, which was able to meet the demands of the Belkan military. As mentioned earlier, Belka's industrial strength was a key factor in the creation of the country's Air Force. However, their educational system was a more remarkable feat. The Belkan Air Force was also one of the first organizations to recognize the importance of the life of its pilots. On one hand, it was easy for Belka to produce and repair damaged aircraft, given that Belka was a very industrialized nation. However, on the other hand, they faced the painful reality that they could not train or replace the skilled pilots at an industrial rate just like they could with regular aircraft. As for the mindset of the elite Belkan pilots, many people believe that their mindset was influenced by the way of the traditional Belkan knight. But it's reasonable to say that their thoughts acknowledge the rarity of understanding and high-skilled pilots. Adding to that, their educational curriculum was segmented on several levels. The Belkan Air Force Academy had some connections throughout the world, and because of these connections, some pilots were given the opportunity to fly on several battlefields all over the world. So like these new people learning, the recruits, they got that opportunity. That's kind of like how the Germans got to practice a little bit in Spain, the Spanish Civil War in real life. So by giving student pilots this intensive training and extensive knowledge and practical experience, the Belkan Air Force Academy managed to forge these recruits into excellent aviators. They also emphasized the core value of the Belkan Air Force, which was to have pilots return from their missions alive. Afterwards, this became a basis on their educational system, and that resulted in a system that created many ace pilots in Belka. However, the limit of the Belkan Air Force was finally reached in 1995 during the Belkan War. The idea of destroying a large number of enemies with a small number of forces certainly produced excellent ace pilots. However, when the military branches of developed nations began to realize the importance of integrated operations between the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force in order to promote efficiency through cooperation, the Belkan military was still stuck in that old thinking and those traditional tactics, and as a result, their forces were limited to operations without extensive cooperation between different branches of the military. The fact is that although the Belkan Air Force became a remarkably skilled organization, it lost its place as a strategic air force to the other developed nations such as Austria, or Lithuania, or even Ustio. From the end of the 20th century to the beginning of the 21st century, the Belkan army was dismantled due to their loss in the Belkan War, and adding to that, it became common knowledge that Belka had lost its place amongst the world's most industrialized nations. Despite the fact that the Belkan Air Force was not necessarily superior in terms of integration capabilities, its history attracts the attention and hearts of many, and the reasons are that first, the pilots only lived to fight many aerial battles, and second, how the ideas from knighthood influenced the Belkan ace pilots. Despite all the time that has passed since the early Belkan victories, when their forces faced large quantities of enemies with few squadrons, people are still interested in this topic today. So that was, the main article from the Belkan Air Power magazine. You can find again, like I said, the original text in the description, and that gives us some more details on, more really in depth on Strangereal's history. It's one of those things that the video game doesn't have in itself. When you play the game, you don't know about it, but when you go look for more material, they have that on the official website. Now, unfortunately, pretty much everything they have there is in Japanese. So that was my attempt to bring this knowledge from Japanese and translate to English, and maybe some more people can enjoy this content, maybe even translate to other languages. So that was the video of today, talking about the history of the Belkan Air Force and a little bit on the early days of Strangereal. And you can check the link in the description, and I'll leave it that to you. I hope you have enjoyed this really historical video translation project, and that's it. So thank you guys for watching, and have a great day, and see you guys here in the channel for more stuff about Ace Combat.